Welcome to the Longevity Optimization Podcast, where we discuss longevity, optimal health, nutrition, peak performance, cognitive excellence, and so much more. All right, Dr. Paziotopoulos, it's a pleasure to have you here with me today.
It's a pleasure to be here. It's a beautiful place.
Thank you so much. Today we're going to be talking about AI and longevity. You're a medical doctor. Tell us a little bit first, how did you get your start? How did you get interested in longevity?
Yeah, I mean, kind of a long story, but I went around the long way.
Okay. Tell me about it.
So instead of, standard undergrad medical school, go on, I did undergrad and I did it in anthropology, physical anthropology, and ecology, ethology, and evolution. Then I didn't do much with it and became a builder. And I built for about 8 years in Chicago, houses and projects, things like that.
Interesting.
And, but that was really cool because I got to learn a lot about project management. Mm-hmm. And that is really being useful now.
Oh.
Then I got into yoga, and one of my girlfriends got me into yoga, and I dove head first and did the super long teacher training, like right out of the gate. I fell in love with Ashtanga and sold my business and moved to Boulder.
Big life change.
Lived in a cooperative house where you had to be a vegan, and you had to do Vipassana meditation. You had to be an activist, and you had to have a spiritual practice. Okay. So, and that was called the Chrysalis Cooperative. And I lived there for a few years and studied with Richard Freeman doing Ashtanga. And then I started doing Shaolin Kung Fu.
Okay.
And fell in love with that and went all the way up to about third degree black belt.
Oh, wow. That's great.
So I was feeling amazing. It was probably like some of the most vibrant I've ever been in my life. Okay. But I didn't have any stressors. And I just decided I want to do something with all this. So went back, took some more classes, did some neuroscience this time and more biochemistry. I was going to go down the PhD route of neuroscience. One of my best friends talked me out of it. He's like, that's not going to work. And I was like, I'm like, well, why is that not going to work? And he's just like, think about it. He's like, you're going to write a dissertation. They're going to tell you to rewrite it. You're going to tell them you don't need to rewrite it. They're right. They're never going to get you your degree. He's like, and then if some, wonderful thing happens and you can get through all of that, then you have to write for grant money.
Yeah.
And who are you going to get your money from?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, you just write the grants for the money. He's like, they're all going to be dirty companies according to you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And they'll be dirty money and you won't take it. So you'll perish. So he's like, why don't you just go be a doctor and then you could do research or you could see people or you could do whatever you want.
Yeah, that's true.
And I was like, oh, yeah, all right, I'll do that. And so I went to med school. And then in med school, I was like, well, I don't know if I really want to do this kind of stuff. So I found a functional medicine program out of A4M.
Yep.
And I started doing that while I was still in med school.
Oh, wow. That's
which they let me start it. And of course, I wouldn't be able to get my fellowship until you have a certain amount of years of practice. But it was a double-edged sword because while you're going through residency and functional medicine.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure that has to be.
They really butt heads really hard.
I tell me about it.
So it kind of got me in trouble a lot. So I'd be like, well, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, we could do this, right?
So anyway, and then the residency I went to was really awesome because it had integrative medicine and residency from Arizona, from Dr. Weil's program.
Oh, nice.
So I got that, and I did functional medicine, and I did the advanced metabolics, and then I did a stem cell fellowship, and I threw some aesthetics in there, and then I did peptide workshops, and
nice.
I just keep trying to stay on top of everything. And then lately, I've been in age reversal conferences.
Fun.
And I created this thing called the maintenance engineering.
I love that. Yeah, we talked a little bit about it.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I speak, and that's what I'm asked to speak about at conferences.
Okay, so first of all, love the story. You've lived a couple different lives, it sounds like, but I love where you ended up. And the industry, it's so fun. I'm actually, Are you going to A4M this year?
Yeah, I'll be there.
Okay, great. Me too. We're doing this red carpet thing on the 15th. Are you familiar with that?
I don't know
It was like a documentary called Biohack Yourself.
Oh.
I'll send you some details about it. They're about to do one on female health too that I'm in. So it's a lot of fun. So that'll be good. But love like A4M, great resource. So yes, talk to me about this new platform that you've built.
Yeah. So think about it like this. Think about something that's really complex that needs to be maintained at the utmost level of optimization or people die.
So the body?
No, just in general.
Okay.
So like think about like the airline industry or bridges or rockets, NASA projects, things like that, right? So if you go back in time over 100 some years ago, they created maintenance engineering. Because what the engineers found out back then was that their machines were not the sum of their parts. Mm-hmm. And so when you start making really complex machines, they act differently. And you also have to make sure that they're maintained at the right level. So like this part might last for this many hours, right? Or this part might go under a certain amount of stress and needs to be replaced at a certain time. Or this hydraulic system might need maintenance at this scheduling.
Yeah.
And then they figure out, okay, it might fail here, so that means that we have to maintain it here, right? Yeah. Otherwise, people die.
Yeah.
And the airline industry is a great example of this, right? Because, there's very few crashes. I mean, there are, but they're extremely few. Yeah, and then you compare that to the system of medicine that we have today. And if you listen to NASA, they always talk about single points of failure. Mm. So they might have the James Webb Space Telescope, right? It had 250 or something more single points of failure. So if any one of these failures happened, the whole thing was scrapped, right? Yeah. They would have a useless piece of garbage in space, billions and billions of dollars. So they had to make sure that everything worked really well, and those single points of failure, they worked it out really well, so they didn't happen.
Yeah.
So we have single points of failures as human beings.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things that kind of drives me crazy about longevity is because people don't talk about this first. And so, somewhere between every 40 seconds and every minute in this country, there's a cardiovascular event, an MI, a heart attack. That's ridiculous. Yeah. Because, we have the Clearly Heart exam, or you could just get a CCTA. There's other kinds of measures that you can do laboratory-wise. So, this is a completely preventable thing, 100%. Nothing's 100% preventable, right? But we could drastically reduce how many cardiovascular events there are. Yeah. Same thing with strokes. We can image the brain. Mm-hmm. With contrast, and we can see all the blood vessels in the brain and if there's going to be an aneurysm or there's not going to be an aneurysm. And you can do that at regular intervals so you can track and you can measure. So you'll be like, okay, this blood vessel was this diameter at this point in time, and now it's this diameter at this point in time. And then you can graph that out this is going to rupture and, it's going to be an aneurysm. It's just that same thing with the hose when it starts to open up. Poussin's law says that the pressure times the radius to the fourth, it's going to go. Yeah. So we need to keep track of all the main vessels, the aorta, all the main vessels of the brain. Nobody does that. Or there's very few people that do that.
Yeah, it's actually funny. So I did this, the German company called ProSieben, I think, they flew out yesterday, and they filmed. They came over at 5 a.m. So as I was rolling out of bed, they filmed my entire routine. But one of the questions that they asked, because my husband and I have gotten a lot of press about, living to 150 and stuff, and they asked me, are you scared that something's going to happen to him, out of the blue? Right. And my response was, from a health standpoint, I'm not, because we're imaging, we're doing the Clearly soft plaque analysis, we're looking at the brain, we're doing the MRI. So it would be a very small percentage, but most people, it would be a very small percentage that something health-wise came out of the blue.
Yeah.
Because we see where things are trending, right? And the second that I see that trending in the wrong direction, you take action. Yeah. And then you can, stop that from becoming a massive issue. Sure, he could, one of us could get hit by a car or something. That's a different situation. You don't have control over that. But I agree with you completely. But I think such a very tiny percentage of people see it like that.
Yeah, right. And then, there's these companies that are even doing full body MRIs on people. And they're quite expensive. My cost is so much less than what people are paying out of pocket. And then when I see the reports, when people go to and get these things and they bring them in, they're not very detailed at all.
Yeah.
These radiologists are not. So like the radiologists that work with us, like they're measuring everything, right? And then we're also taking that and we're sending it out to different AIs. And then those AIs can analyze things in a different way, kind of like Clearly does for the heart, that a radiologist can't see.
Yeah.
Right? So like radiologists, they can see things with their naked eye pretty well, but it's really hard for them to pick up like, well, how much iron is deposited in this organ? And what degree of inflammation does this organ have? Right? And what is the exact volume of this organ? And that ties in like with the thymus a lot. Right. So we know the thymus gland, responsible for T cells and your immunity. It goes through this thing called involution, and it gets smaller as you age. And so it gets less effective. Not only does it get smaller, it gets infiltrated with fat. And so it's, you can see it with the naked eye a little bit, but the AI can see it a lot better. And so the AI can say, okay, there's this much fat there, and there's this much, what they call parenchyma, which is the natural tissue of that organ. And then we can track that over time. And then we can see like, okay, are these things that we're doing that are supposedly going to grow the thymus back working? Or are they not working? So we need to make changes.
Do you do any like growth hormone and see any benefits with that?
I like to use peptides that stimulate growth hormone rather than using growth hormone.
Something like a CJC or...
Yeah, and now, we're limited in which ones we can use because of the FDA.
They're bringing some back, though.
Yeah, CJC is coming back first quarter next year.
Yeah. I think at some point it might already be back.
Yeah.
We can get it now.
So you can always get it for research use, but in the clinic, I can't do that.
No, we can't get it from actual like FDA
great.
pharmacies now, but it might be state by state. Maybe they're rolling it out a little slower.
Yeah, but we should be able to get that back, and I think a lot of the peptides will be able to get back now.
Yeah, which is that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
Well, actually, yes, I also agree with you. I think there's a very specific reason why we're going to go to a lot of peptides back here soon, but that's another conversation. Real quick to go back to the MRI. So how are you getting the more detailed imaging? Do you guys own an MRI or are you referring out?
We refer out. I just made a deal with a company that's nearby. They have a nice, good 3 Tesla MRI. The Institute for Medical Maintenance Engineering, we're going to obtain a Siemens 3T, which is state of the art.
Yeah. I've done one of those before.
We are looking at a higher grade, like the 7 Teslas that are out. I just had to laugh when I saw the sticker price because they're for research only right now. So like they're like $60 million.
$60 million. Okay. Geez.
And then you have to know how to read them and set them up. And then that's the...
Oh my gosh. See, I did not think you were going to say 60.
Got a little out of my price right now. And then 11 Teslas are going to be coming too. So, but a good 3 Tesla with, AI, you're going to get to a very small resolution.
What's the AI?
So there's different AIs that can look at imaging. And when we talk about AI, one of the things that AI does the best is looking at imaging. If you go back and you look at Watson, that was developed, more than 10 years ago. And it was better than radiologists were back then. Because they fed so many different studies into Watson. And so now every AI has access to all the stuff Watson had.
What happened with Watson? Didn't something...
I think Watson just evolved into other things.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So basically everything that Watson learned is now available to most AIs.
Okay, got it. Oh, that was ahead of its time, I guess.
Yeah, way ahead. And, it was amazing in itself. And now the new AIs are even better. I mean, a lot better.
Yeah. Is there a particular one, though, that you guys are using for the MRIs, something like Clearly?
Yeah, there's a company, and they're out of England. I can't think of their name. And they do an organ scan. So they do a liver scan, and then they can apply that also to all the other organs, to the pancreas and all that kind of stuff. And they do the same kind of reading. So inflammation, how much fat, how much iron. Yeah. They give you a bunch of different readings on it, and they can do volumes and things like that. You're going to be able to program any AI. So we have an AI that we're working with right now that we're programming.
Nice.
So it's our own. And it's necessary for the IMME or the medical maintenance engineering because we're collecting all this data into a data lake. Mm-hmm. And the big thing that I see that's a real need in this field is data, but data that has compliance. So, for instance, say like you give somebody X amount of medicines and supplements and lifestyle stuff. You don't know exactly if they're doing that or not. You have to just see if they're doing that or if they're not. You just ask them subjectively. And the problem with that is manyfold, but mostly that people are not very good at observing themselves and knowing what they're doing. So since I've been tracking, like I like to ask people because I have the data. And I can go into like how we're getting the data.
Yeah.
I'll say like, well, how good are you on your supplements? And they're like, I don't know, 70, 80%, you know? And then I know that they're like 20%.
Gosh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, I can show you like in my bag upstairs, I have, when we give supplements and medications, we give them in packs.
Nice.
You know, people sign waivers, we had our lawyers work it out. So because compliance was so poor, even with the people that come in to do this, I do an interview with them to see if they have what I call radical willingness. Because if they don't have radical willingness, I say that's not really a good program for you because it's really demanding.
Yeah.
Right? Not so much demanding on your time. You know, I mean, it does take some time, but more demanding on like, you just have to be disciplined to do these things.
I was going to say demanding on your discipline.
Right? And so I'm like, and I try to take as much away from them as I can. Mm-hmm. You know, you go into somebody that's like biohacking or something in their house and there's bottles everywhere.
Like supplements.
Right? Yeah. And they're responsible for taking those things at whatever time of day or with food or without food. And like that becomes a hobby.
Yeah.
And a hobby that takes up a lot of time. And so like we pretty much eliminate most of that. Nice. By just giving them in these packs. Mm-hmm. The next iteration of these packs, which is coming out early next year, is they'll be able to take their pack and just wave it over their phone. And it'll give us a time and date stamp. Nice. And then we know exactly what supplements, what medications, and everything that's taken and what time. And so we'll have even better compliance than we do now. Because now everything goes out in 30-day cycles. And what'll happen is people will be like, oh, I still have stuff I don't need anymore.
Yeah.
And so then we're like, okay. And so we're tracking month by month, but now we're going to be able to track not only day by day, but what time.
Yeah. You could just say that you're going to be fired from the program if you don't do it. That would increase compliance.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little rough on people, but like, you know.
But, you know, sometimes you got to take the hard stance because it is, for whatever reason, like it's just something in my brain is different where being super disciplined, to me, I'm obsessed with it. I love it. But for so many people, it's so difficult.
Yeah, it is. And I think we're just trying to make it as easy as we can. And the other thing is that like, we want to be able to get really good data so that we know what's working and what's not working and that we know what to change.
Yeah.
Right. So right now they get checked in on once a week by a liaison. Like they call them
coach or something,
and they get a little questionnaire that's shot to their phone, so we can get more data that way.
Yeah.
And then they can also get a little encouragement and things like that.
You should make it a voice note. That would be way easier.
Which people need, you know. Mm-hmm. Everyone's so different. We try to give them options of what they want.
Yeah, I would love a voice note.
Some people want to talk to somebody. Somebody wants to text. Somebody wants to fill out a questionnaire. So like we just try to, I'm like, I just need the data. Yeah. Whatever you're going to do, just do it. Sure. And I mean, these are just humans, right? So, but now we'll be able to feed that to all the different universities. So we have a person from Berkeley that's in bioinformatics that's going to help us look at some stuff. UCSD, they're going to help us look at things. So as we start to get more and more data, we're going to be able to say like, okay, this doesn't seem to work. This seems to work.
Yeah.
Right. Right now we're using as much as we can. That's, whatever I deem is non-toxic, pretty much, right? That has great potential to help.
What are some of your favorites?
Right. Oh gosh. I mean, we're probably working with over 100 compounds.
Okay.
Right.
How many people on average, like how many supplements on average is each person in this program taking?
Probably over 100.
Per day?
Not capsules, but
Okay.
but as far as different compounds, for sure.
Well, what are like top 5?
I would say top 5 would be like nicotinamide riboside,
Yeah.
right? Ornithine alpha-ketoglutarate. I know that people like calcium, but I like the ornithine a little bit better. You can take it in higher amounts, and it also helps with the nitrogen scavenging. And all you really need is that alpha-ketoglutarate portion. That calcium part doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So I really like that. What else do I really like? I like TA65.
Okay.
We have that in there. We don't really know exactly the data, but I do see changes in the immune system response.
What is that? I'm not familiar with that one.
So TA65 was created, I don't even know, 15 years ago. And they wanted to lengthen telomeres.
Okay.
All right. And so they created this proprietary way of, it's taken from astragalus, but it's how they did it
Okay.
that, allows you to somehow get lengthened telomeres. The telomere data is okay, but the data on the immune system is far greater.
Yeah.
And so I really like it for that. Anytime I can get the immune system to work a little bit better, we're winning.
Yeah.
Right.
Agreed.
So I really like that. I don't give spermidine in a pill form.
Okay.
I really like spermidine in its natural food source.
Okay.
So natto. I'm a huge soy proponent.
Okay.
And a lot of that has to do with mitochondrial data.
Interesting.
I just gave a keynote in Andorra. It was with Aubrey.
Nice.
Yeah, it was, and Aubrey went and he gave his talk, and then I gave my talk, and a lot of it came from Dr. Hemal Patel, and when I was going through all the data for mitochondria, it comes down to how healthy are your membranes,
Yeah.
right? And mitochondria have to sense both the outside and the inside world. They have to know what's going on in the nucleus. They have to know what's going on in the cytoplasm. They have to know what's going on outside the cell. And they do that by this, they're always in contact with these different membranes. And so membrane fluidity is really important. And most of what your membrane's made out of is phosphatidylcholine. And there's some ways you can get phosphatidylcholine, but if you're eating soy, you're getting a ton of it.
Interesting. Couple questions. First of all, how much natto do you have to eat to get like a clinically relevant dose?
1 teaspoon of natto is going to give you about 15 milligrams of spermidine.
Nice.
So you're not going to get that in a pill.
Yeah.
Or if you're going to get it, it's going to be incredibly expensive.
Yeah.
And there's so many other benefits to the natto that I just tell people, just go buy natto.
Yeah. You have to figure out how to
Just go get it. It's like, you got to get used to the taste. It's definitely an acquired taste because it's highly fermented.
Yeah. I love fermented foods though, and also I don't care too much about the taste. I just care about the benefit.
Yeah, and you're getting natto kinase, right, which is awesome. Decreases fibrinogen, all that kind of stuff, decreases inflammation. You're getting all the good fatty acids, to maintain your membranes. You're getting the spermidine. I mean, so there's a lot of, and then you're getting all the phytosoy, estrogens that are going to block the overexcitation of the estrogen receptor, because in today's life, due to all the toxins, everyone's estrogen receptors are just getting nailed, right? From all these plastics and all these other kind of things. It's not about the estrogen or about the phytoestrogens. It's more about the fake stuff.
Yeah, because that was going to be my question. Obviously, yeah, we know that all of these endocrine disruptors and, estrogen mimicking substances are just running amok and causing chaos, right? So I have always tried to, and I'm excited we're talking about this, because I've always a little bit put the brakes on soy just because, I felt like I already was like potentially getting exposure, but you're saying that it won't increase the estrogen.
It won't. I've never seen it. And one thing I really love to do is I like to look at old medicine, right? Mm-hmm. And just old health studies. So when you looked in Asia before we started meddling and bringing Western culture over there, they had high soy intake.
Yeah.
And smaller breast size and less breast cancer, high soy intake.
Interesting.
And then that's those people from the same families that were living that way come to America, breast size increases, breast cancer increases. Now, it might not just be the food. Yeah. There could be all the toxins and everything else going on. And
maybe hormones too, right?
And hormones in our food, obviously, but in the state where they were at a high soy intake, they didn't have that.
Interesting.
So that's just another thing, right?
Yeah. Interesting. Good to hear that, Bill. Okay, so we're down to not spermidine, but the I'm pronouncing it wrong. How do we say it? Natto?
Oh, natto.
Natto.
Yeah.
Okay. What other molecules do you like a lot?
Let's see. As far as supplements go, I mean, there's so many of them. Urolithin A.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I like urolithin A a lot. You can definitely get it from food. You're just not going to get in that kind of dose. I also don't know when they come up with these dosages. Nobody really knows.
Yeah, that's
right.
True. Well, the dosage also can't be the same. Because when I'm putting together my supplements and my husband's supplements, it's the same. It can't really be the same. But it's just a guess.
Yes, right. So I would still say eat the foods that are high in urolithin A, like pomegranate and things like that. I wish I knew what was really doing the bang of the work, right? Yeah. Vitamin D and fish oils or algae oils, like in my case, I'm vegan, gluten-free since the 90s. They're the most important.
Yeah.
By far, hands down. I just always tell everybody, if we leave here, you never come back, just take your vitamin D and fish oil.
Yeah, I would throw magnesium in there, right? Would you?
Yeah, that's, you can keep adding.
Right? Those are the three, if you don't do anything else, it's those things.
There's pretty good data that a quarter of the diseases would just disappear with those two things.
I know. It's insane, how, well, first of all, the reference range is a joke anyway. How is it, what is it, 30 to 100? Yeah. This is massive. And this is we have so much data to say that 30 is not even acceptable. And then I heard an insane stat that 30% of the population has below 30. How do you even get below 30?
Well, if you have dark skin,
okay,
it gets really low. So, you just got to look back evolution. So people living near the equator have darker skin. People living further north have lighter skin, right? Yeah. So you take somebody with really dark skin, and you take somebody with really light skin, and you put them out in the sun naked. Mm-hmm. The person with really light skin in 15, 20 minutes has made a whole day's worth of vitamin D.
Yeah.
And the person with the dark skin might take 4 hours.
Yeah. I use this app. It's kind of fun. I do, because I try to get, there's so many benefits, right? Obviously, we should take vitamin D supplementation if we can't get it. It's such a complicated, conversation right now because, we have the pros of the sun, actually the entire synthesis process of taking the sun and creating it into a usable form of vitamin D, which is super beneficial. But then we have the, negative longevity impacts of the skin. And then we have it's just...
I would just take it.
It's a whole thing, yeah.
One of the analogies I give my patients is imagine your skin's like a solar panel.
Uh-huh.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, if you want to use your solar panel to make energy, what are you going to do? You're going to find a really nice sunny place where the entire panel is going to be covered by the sun all day.
Yeah.
When do you do that with your skin?
Midday. Or are you saying
So
never?
Almost no one never does that, right?
Yeah.
Like you have clothes on and like what percentage of your skin is actually available to the sun? Is it at the right angle to the sun? And is it there from the time the sun comes up to the time the sun goes down?
Oh, well, no, definitely not.
Right?
Not
So
that. I mean, I have the first feed checked.
It's like I'm going to give you this as a solar panel, but I'm only going to let you use this much of it for only a half an hour a day.
I know.
How much power are you going to make?
I know, not much. I know. I try to get a little bit still. I have this app, so it'll tell you like how many essentially like I use, and then I'm lucky because it's super private back here, and you just don't wear clothes, and my husband and I lay out and get sun. So I try to get some of the benefits, but then the rest of it I just supplement with vitamin D.
Because I mean, it's not a vitamin, it's a corticosteroid hormone, and hormones turn on genes.
Yeah.
And 200 genes of your immune system are dependent on vitamin D.
Yeah.
And if you look at meta-analysis, there's a kind of a cutoff around 60. Mm-hmm. So the people that have a vitamin D level higher than 60 are less likely to have cancer than the people lower than 60.
Yeah.
And it's quite a bit, right? And if you look, there's all the different cancers have different numbers that they break off at.
Yeah.
But I just try to keep everyone over 60. And I like to keep people like 75, 80 just as a cushion.
Yeah.
You'll hear people say like, oh my gosh, calcium's going to get out of control. And if it goes too high and all that stuff. I've never seen it. I've heard about it. I've never seen it, it happened a couple of times where I saw really, really high levels. Like one was a bodybuilder, which was at level like 450.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, and I did an EKG and I got ionized calcium. And, I was like, oh my gosh, dude's totally fine. No side effects, no nothing.
How did he get 450? Vitamin D?
Been 50,000 a day.
Oh, casual. Okay.
And then I had another person when I was a resident who also was doing something crazy and they were super high and like, again, nothing.
Yeah.
So it's usually really safe. You probably have to have something else going on metabolically in order to have something go wrong with calcium.
Yeah.
Right? So there's just a lot of like checks and balances. I mean, imagine like you're a primitive person and you're naked and you're in the sun beating down on you every single day. Like your body's making excessive amounts of vitamin D.
Yeah.
You have to have fail-safes in order to deal with the high levels.
Yeah. That makes a lot of
sense.
Right.
So, yeah, I think it's really safe.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I'm like exploring. What do you think about methylene blue?
I played with methylene blue quite a bit. In the little studies that I've done, and they're, ends of like 5. So you're not talking a lot. Well, I like to use the CNS vital signs test. Mm-hmm. And I'll have somebody do a CNS vital signs test, and then I'll give them a nootropic and do it again.
Yeah.
I almost never see any differences.
Really?
And like you'll hear all these people like, oh, it's so great. And I'm like, get around your confirmation bias, get around your placebo effect and all that kind of stuff. And that real world is kind of minimal. But like if it does make you feel better, like why not? And like, there's a lot of cool benefits to methylene blue, besides your pea turning green and stuff like that, I mean.
Or blue, depending on how much you take.
You know what I mean? So I don't know. Maybe I think once in a while it might be good as an antioxidant, right?
Yeah.
I like Transcription's version of it.
Yeah.
Because it's clean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really hard to find good methylene blue.
Yeah, you definitely do not want to take lab methylene blue.
Yep, agreed. Dr. Scott is a friend of mine.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Hi guys, I'm going to interrupt this episode for a brief announcement. As you may or may not know, I started a community for females by females, and it's a female longevity optimization community. This is a place that you can connect with like-minded women. We are all here to support each other, and there's a variety of different benefits to being a member. You get a monthly Ask Me Anything, so submit your questions and I'll answer them directly. We also have an entire library of courses on all of the important components of longevity, such as labs, nutrition, exercise, sleep optimization, longevity optimization protocols that I'm doing, along with real-time updates to my personal protocols. There are so many benefits of being a member of the community. We'll also be doing in-person live events here in California and virtual events for anyone that can't attend. But if you're interested in joining the community, I would absolutely love to see you there, and I will include a link in the show notes.
Okay, I want to go back to, then we'll circle back to this because I'm interested in like what we both think about these different supplements. Going back to this management system that you have, number one, I agree. I don't know if you've read up how often I'm doing labs, but I'm doing hundreds of biomarkers every quarter, like super consistently. It's amazing because I see when any single thing changes. Like when we moved in here, I didn't immediately have a whole home water filtration system. Yeah. I did have shower water filters. I did have reverse osmosis in the kitchen, doing a lot already, right? Nope, not good enough. I do total tox burden again, and I see that those toxins are starting to creep up just because of shower water with a shower water filter. So I love getting real-time feedback. Yeah. My husband, for example, I bought him this all this paraben-free stuff. I'm the chief health officer, he calls me. Okay. So I just give him stuff to take in his gym bag. And I see his total tox burden. I'm like, your parabens have increased. What's going on here?
What are you using?
Yeah, and he's like, well, I just didn't grab it out of my gym bag, and I was using the one at the gym. And I'm like, it's amazing to me how fast you can catch things.
Your skin absorbs. You ever see that chemistry experiment with chlorine?
I don't think I've seen it.
Oh, it's great. It's what an undergrad professor will do, right? They'll have a glass of water, tap water. Which doesn't have a ton of chlorine in it, but it's got enough. It's got enough where the pool test kit will pick it up.
Horrible.
Right?
That's so bad.
And then he'll put the pool test kit there and all right, there's chlorine in there, right? Uh-huh. And then take your finger and just run your finger around the water for a while, pull it out, dry it off, and then do the test kit again. There's no chlorine in it.
Interesting.
It's all in your finger.
Wow.
So to me, I'm always just patients are oh, I got to filter my drinking water. I'm like, filter your shower.
Yeah, totally. But even the shower filters are not good enough. I feel like they're.
You need a surface area, right? Yeah. And what's crazy is you'll see these little discs, this big, for a shower water filter with high pressure.
Yeah, it's tiny.
And it's there's just not enough surface area to hit all that water before it gets past it.
Yeah.
So you need a more robust filter. Mm-hmm. The whole house is the best way to go. Yeah. Right? Where you can get really big canisters of charcoal and bone char that are about this tall, 60 pounds. Yeah. That's really the best way to go about it. Yeah. But there is a company that makes a decent shower filter, and it's not that expensive. I think it's $150 or something like that. Yeah. What is the name?
We can always
it'll come back to me, but they're great. Their slogan's the best. It's buy a filter or be a filter.
That's a great slogan. Yeah, I love it.
They're called Vitasalis.
Vitasalis. Okay, yeah, great.
They're a great little company out of Michigan, and their engineer will talk to you, and they won't just sell you a filter that fits all. They will. They know most of the water quality from where you live, and if not, they'll have you send in a sample.
Love that. Yeah.
And then they'll design the system based on your water.
Yeah, I love that. That's the way it really should be done. But I didn't know that was an option for shower water filters. That's the process, for whole home normally. But that's really helpful, and that is reasonable. I wonder how frequently, are you supposed to change them every 6 months?
That one, I think, it just depends on the quality of your water, right? So, if you were running really high chlorine in your area, you're going to do it more often. Yeah. And left, I just getting these cheap kits. And just measuring your own chlorine. Yeah. Right? Because there's no way that 4 months, 6 months, 8 months, you don't know.
Yeah.
Right? It's just once that charcoal's saturated, it's not going to pick anything else up.
Yeah.
So just intermittently test. And the big thing to test for is chlorine. Yeah. Right? And if you see chlorine, well, then for sure other contaminants are getting through too.
Yeah, I know. Ideally, I think whole home, because I'm trying to when you're looking at such like a granular level at like every single, most toxins, not every toxin, but you can see because, I can look at the water supply for Los Angeles, and I can look at like on the EWG, I'll look up, our water supply and see the elevated levels. And that time when I didn't have home water filtration, even with shower water filters, I could see some of those contaminants increasing. I mean, it's small, right? Yeah. But it's like, well, if you keep doing it over time.
Sure. And you're somebody that saunas.
Saunas a lot. Yeah, I sauna.
Imagine the people that don't.
I know. That's why water filter, and an air filter. That would be like, that's like my first step for anyone who's like, I want to lower the tox. Like we have, I think, 6 of these.
Okay, great.
Yeah. And could probably filter like 3 times the amounts of house that.
Yeah, and the same thing with the air filter, right? Like HEPA's not enough. You have to have charcoal.
Yeah.
Right? Pretty much charcoal for everything. Like charcoal, more charcoal.
Yeah, that's
right.
Great.
And if you want to take fluoride out, you need bone jar.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, now that we finally, however long this took to figure out that fluoride is horrible for you, we finally are here. So maybe they'll start taking it out, but who knows? Who knows?
We can hope.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. So going back to the program, like just walk me through. Say I'm a new patient. Like what's going on here?
Yeah. So you're a new patient, and or you're a prospective member of the institute, is what we say, right?
Well, I have the discipline, so you can count on me for that.
Yeah. And so we do the whole interview with you to see, like, do you have radical willingness? And we take you through a standard kind of month. Mm-hmm. What's going to be required of you, and ask you like, are you willing to do all this? Are you willing to communicate with us? Are you willing to like swallow all these pills? Because, people don't want to swallow pills.
Yeah.
They really don't,
Really?
It's a lot of people like they give you a lot of flack for it. And I kind of give them the rundown. Like, did you ever see the sword swallower at the circus? Right? Like the sword swallower at the circus didn't do that overnight.
Yeah.
Right? It's a skill. So can I swallow like a whole handful of pills? Yeah, it doesn't even bother me.
Yeah.
Right? I do it in like 1 second.
Yeah.
But that doesn't happen overnight for most people. Yeah. But you can learn to do it. And so like, and I'm like, we're gonna have little videos and we'll show you how to do it. And as long as you stick with it, you'll be okay. Mm-hmm. And so we take them through that. And then you say, okay, I'm in. Mm-hmm. And so then what we do is what all maintenance engineers do. You start with what's called the discovery process. And so with the discovery process, we say, we want you to fill out these questionnaires, and we want you to give us access to as many of the old medical records that you have, right? And then we order all these tests.
Yeah.
And everything from epigenetics to glycans to, the urinary hormones, like it just goes down the gambit, telomere length, all the labs, the telomere, your mitochondria, and we get everything back.
What's your favorite test for measuring like mitochondrial function?
Oh, there's only one.
The one that you mentioned.
There's 2. One, you can get a muscle biopsy.
Yeah.
Which costs, thousands and thousands of dollars, and you have a huge, large bore needle go into your quad. Yeah. Or you do a me-screen.
Me-screen, yeah. I need to do that. That's one that I haven't done.
Yeah, so me-screen was developed by Dr. Hemal Patel on a grant from NASA.
Nice.
Because NASA wanted to be able to measure mitochondrial function of the astronauts without doing muscle biopsy, right? And they said, well, you also can't do a blood draw. And so he came up with this bilayer card. So you put drops of blood on one well of the card, and then it wicks out the plasma to the other side, and it's stable for 30 days. So you can send it to patients, and they can just send it in the mail.
That's great.
It's fantastic information because it gives you all the different markers of mitochondria, especially like how the mitochondria are acting when they're stressed.
Great.
So
love that. I need to do that one.
It's a great test. Really, the only reason that Dr. Patel is on our advisory board is that he ran that test on me about a year ago. He just gave me a free test, and he's like, here, run this. And then I get a call from him, and he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, what? And he's just like, we've run 400 something of these, and you're like one of the best that we've run, like within 1 or 2.
Nice.
And they ran a bunch of like 20 and 30-year-olds. And so then I showed him my protocol, and I'm like, okay, we're starting the IMME, and he's like, okay, I'm in.
Love that.
So that was pretty cool. So it's a really great test because I noticed that you run it on people that you think are really healthy and they're not.
Okay, so that was so interesting. You say like some healthy people, you run the test.
Yeah, and I know we're getting off because you want to see what it was like to be a patient, but like people that work out hard age faster.
Yeah.
And you can see it all over the board. Like, I don't run the entire senolytic associated secretory phenotype, but I run a bunch of it.
Yeah.
And they're making senolytic cells faster, and their mitochondria are more stressed and less able to handle free radicals.
Got it.
There's just really Goldilocks.
Yeah,
level
let's clarify
of
because
exercise.
I don't want people to hear that and think, oh, let's not work out because also I think that defining someone who works out really hard, it's not a big portion of the population, right? It's like it's because a lot of people actually don't push themselves. Like we go to, and I don't say this to be like mean or anything, but like you go to the gym and you see people, they're just on their phone or like doing nothing.
Yeah.
But then mentally they're like, I went to the gym, so that means I can eat more. And this is like really problematic, right? Like, so let's define what is that Goldilocks rule?
To me, the Goldilocks, so the thing that I really stress on people is you got to lift things that are extremely heavy.
Yeah.
When you lift something that's extraordinarily heavy for you, your brain lights up like a Christmas tree.
Yeah.
So all these studies, whether it's QEEG, fMRIs, whatever, like you think, okay, what's the thing that stimulates the brain the most? It's like a deadlift.
Yeah.
Right? And you're like, wait a minute. So the deadlift stimulates my brain more than like playing chess or doing like, calculus or something. And it's like, yeah, logarithmically more, like crazy amounts more. Like doing mental activities does nothing for your brain. Like it's barely even turned on.
Yeah.
At least voltage wise.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is that you have to manage your alpha-1 motor neurons. So you have your alpha-1 motor neurons, they're not different kinds of motor neurons, but they're different sizes. So like the ones that like long distance are smaller, and then the ones that do like moderate like intensity are a bit bigger. And then you have this really small subset of them that are these massive alpha-1 motor neurons. And they're just for doing 100% output, like running a 100-yard dash or lifting that, really heavy deadlift.
Yeah.
And if you don't use them over time, your body will say, this cell's not used. And so we're just going to recycle it. We're going to put it through apoptosis, and what do you need it for? And you'll keep losing these cells as you get older and older, and your peak power goes down because you can't recruit the muscle.
Yeah.
Right? And so you have to maintain power your whole life. Or like, you get older and you trip off the curb and you went to go catch yourself. You don't have that power to catch yourself.
Yeah. Because
Because it's not just strength, it's power.
Yeah.
Right? Really different, right? That's like, powerlifting versus Olympic lifting. And I do like people to do cleans if they can. I like people to do 100-yard sprints, but please do not do a 100-yard dash if you hadn't done it in a while. You will rip your hamstrings apart. Right? You got to work up to it, right? But like sprinting is really important. Like I try to get people, if you did sprints once a week and you lifted heavy weights twice a week, you'd be doing good, right? If you lift once a week, you'll maintain strength. You won't build.
Okay.
I think that the perfect is 3 times a week.
Okay.
If you can do full kind of body stuff 3 times a week, I think you're doing fantastic. And I really like the compound movements.
Agreed. Yeah. Love those.
I think they
Deadlifts,
work the
squats,
best.
Yeah.
Overhead press, bench, that kind of stuff, right?
Good for your bone too, right?
Yeah, because you want to maintain bone density, especially women. They lose bone density really quickly if they don't do these types of things, and they don't replace their hormones.
Yeah. I agree. Okay, so going back to the Goldilocks rule, so are we saying strength training 3 times per week?
Strength training 3 times a week,
Yeah.
if you can, at least twice. Full body. Sprints once a week,
Yeah.
right? And the rest of it, zone 2,
Yeah.
right? Maybe you can do some intervals, like, everyone's talking about like, 4x4s and all that kind of stuff. It's like, okay, But sometimes those real intense exercises will put too much strain on your mitochondria.
Yeah.
So you just have to know your body and you know your recovery, and whether you have an Apple Watch or an Oura Ring or a Whoop or something, get some data, right? And then when you do these really detailed tests like we do at the Institute, you'll see like whether you're working too hard or you're not working hard enough.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's pretty close to what I'm doing. I do 10 to 15,000 steps per day, which is great because these hills are amazing for like in the zone 2.
Fantastic.
And then I do, I'm doing 1 to 2 days per week of zone 2 training. So it is like a 4x4. But this is something I've done for a long time. So it's not like I'm throwing myself into something new. And then I do 3 to 4 days of strength training. But I'm only doing, I used to do a lot longer workouts. I'm only at the gym for about 45 minutes now. So it's not as strenuous. But so, yeah, I think we're pretty aligned on that too.
Yeah, and anybody that doesn't know where to start, like Mark Ripto he's got Starting Strength, and the app goes on your phone, and it's got videos, and the big thing with lifting weights is start very light, and make sure you have perfect form, and make sure you're holding your breath and bearing down against your, not pulling in, but tightening your core. Yeah. Because, your back has super strong muscles, but there's nothing in the front of your spine to protect your spine, especially for slipping disc, right? So when you hold your breath and then you tighten your core really solid, you're creating a really strong air pressure to protect your spine.
Nice, yeah.
And so learning really good form, don't let your back round when you're under load. That's really what'll get you hurt.
Yeah.
And increase your load as you can, as long as you don't compromise your form.
Yeah.
Right? And if you're a beginner, you will gain strength so fast, it's not even funny.
Yeah.
Right?
It's so fun too, like watching, improvements. It's like the best feeling.
And talk about energy. People get energy boosts like they've never experienced in their life from weight training.
Yeah.
From real weight training.
And you get tired later, and like we're so out of sync, right? Like I can't imagine these people are like staying up all hours of the night watching TV. At 8:30, I'm exhausted. Like I'm falling 8 o'clock, I'm starting to get tired, because A, I optimize circadian rhythm, but B, I'm actually pushing myself during the day.
So let's get back. So we're doing all these tests. So we go all these tests, and then we create this protocol for you. And your protocol, depending on your age, obviously, and let's just say you're over the age of 40, which is pretty much most of the people. So it's kind of my cutoff of where I want to start doing age reversal medicine on someone.
Cutoff in terms of you don't want people older?
Younger.
Younger, okay.
I'll treat people that are younger. I'll optimize them, but I don't want to put them on full age reversal.
That makes sense.
I'm just like,
No, it's like...
But technology in 10 years, you'll have it, and, don't worry. You're not going to age that much.
Yeah.
All right?
And plus, I have to always remind myself, like, there's some things I'm not doing. So I turned 34, like, a week ago.
Yeah.
And there's some things that, like, are exciting in the industry, right? Like gene therapy, for example. I'm not doing... I think it's great maybe for some older people, but, like, for me, no. I haven't had kids, and I was 33 years old like last week, so
now. In the next 10 years, it's going to get so much better than it is today. So Brian Delaney, he's also on our advisory board, and he's deep into the genetics, along with Liz. And, Liz is working with vectors, dead viruses, basically, to get this genetic material into your cells. It works good. Just look at her, right? She stopped working out and her quads got bigger, right? She knows what she's doing. There's new therapies that are more short-lived, and they're using plasmids.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be a huge thing in the future, and you're going to have to get them like every year.
Like a tune-up, yeah.
It's tune-ups, but I think that, they're going to get much cheaper than they are now, and you'll have access to a lot more genes.
Yeah.
And you'll be able to do more with it, and then it'll just get better and better and better.
Yeah.
Right? That's definitely in the future. Like, do I play with it now? Yeah, but only as like a very last resort. There's kind of like my different tier system of what I want to do, and that's like the last thing. That's like top of the pyramid kind of stuff.
Yeah. Like if someone maybe really needed to add on muscle mass or something, would you?
Yeah, they really need, and it's mostly like, say somebody was like really sarcopenic, right? And they were really struggling and they just wanted to live a little longer, a little healthier, and money had no object.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you're going to be in the institute and you're going to like optimize all of your supplements and you're going to optimize all your pharmaceuticals and then you're going to optimize your age reversal and you're going to optimize your hormones and, you're going to get all this testing, on regular intervals and you're going to use peptides, that's already a massive expense. And that's the majority of what's going to work.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Anything else that's left over, like exosomes or stem cells or gene therapy or plasma exchange, like, are we going to do it? Sure, we can do it. But like, it's more on top of all that.
Yeah.
Right?
Agreed. That's like a good base.
Yeah. And so we would create a protocol based on your labs for all of your pharmaceuticals and all your supplements.
Is it you doing it or in your team, or is it like AI?
I'm doing it. We run whatever I do through AI just to kind of check and look and give me other ideas of what I might be missing, right? And we also give it to the AI so that the AI knows what I started, right? So the AI is aware of what is the protocol.
Is there like a direct-to-consumer at all AI right now for people to do this? Like, not do what you're doing because you can't get the labs and then you can't. But like, where are we at with this?
Not that I know of, right? Because say you were going to use like a ChatGPT platform, you're limited in memory.
Yeah.
Right? And so what you need is an AI that can access a data lake that you provide, right? And then can run an algorithm that you're constantly updating over time. And so most of the AIs are just like kind of ask a question kind of thing, but they're not actually doing long-term work for you. No. So you have to program them. Eventually what we're going to have with the IMME is we're going to have an app in your hand. And that app is going to talk to our system. And what we're doing is we're rebuilding the EMR. So the EMR is atrocious.
All of them.
None of them work for this.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, actually,
they're just not designed for it. Like, they're designed for functional medicine. They do okay. Like, I can do all my compounds and stuff like that, but they're not really great long term. So, and the real big problem is I don't write a regular note. Right? It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Like, it's not when I'm writing a maintenance engineering note. And we're calling it a medical maintenance engineering note. And so what that means is it's an ongoing note. It's not like, okay, I write the note for this visit, and then I write the note for that visit, and then I write the note for this visit, and like, I can't look at all that. I want to know, like, what is the status of this system over time? What have we done at what interval, and where are you at? Right? What's failed? What's worked? Where are we at? What's the current state of things? And so that's more of how I need it to work.
Yeah.
And so it's more of a project management system than it is an EMR with a medical note. And so this has to be completely rewritten, which we've been doing.
Are you going to make that like available to other clinics?
Yeah. The whole idea of the IMME is that, say you're a physician and you go, or you're an owner of a clinic, say, either way, and you're trying to like source all your supplements and you're trying to source all your pharmaceuticals so they don't have dyes and all kinds of crap in them, right? And then you want to source all your compounds and you want to make sure that they're in the right bases and, they're going to be the same every time and all this kind of stuff. And, well, you've never done that before, right? And how much headache is that for you to do?
I mean, it's a ton of work.
It's a ton of work, right?
And, well, it's actually a ton of work all the time because it's not just the upfront work. The industry is changing so frequently that, there's a new compound, so where do you get it from? And
And then it's like, okay, what lab test are you going to work with? They're always changing.
Yeah.
And so what the whole IMME was going to do is we're going to train physicians to be medical maintenance engineers. We're going to give you a platform so you can just use this platform and it has all the algorithms, the data lake's already in there. The AI is already in there, helps you make your protocols, helps you follow up with your patients, pushes notifications to the patient. So it reminds them like, on today, you're doing this. Send this test in, right? On today, remember, like you're doing this workout, right? You know, give me feedback. Did you do this, right? So all that's automated. So then when you get to your dashboard of that patient, you can see like all their compliance, or you can see any of what's going on with this patient, what's been good with this patient. You never had to worry about an orthomolecular account or a life extension account or whatever it was, right? Because you just created their protocol and their packs were made, right? The RFID is already in the pack. It's already labeled. Their boxes are made. All of their stuff is dated for the day, right? And that patient already paid for their membership for the year. So let's say they didn't take anything for the month of November. Well, they just throw all that in the garbage and they start with their December. And what that is it's good for the patient.
Yeah.
Because right now, say a patient doesn't take some of their supplements from a bottle, they're actually getting rewarded for that because they didn't spend money.
Yeah, that's true.
All right. But if you took that bottle and you say, oh, you didn't take it and you put it in the garbage and you did that every month in front of them, like eventually they're going to be like, well, I don't want to throw that out.
Yeah.
I'm paying for that.
That's a good point.
All right. And so it's not that we want to punish them. It's just like you're already paying for this.
Yeah.
And so the membership price that includes all their testing, all their pharmaceuticals, all their supplements, you know, everything that's included, it's the way to go to help them.
Yeah.
And it gives us really good data because then you know, like, even say it's something simple, like you're trying to like manage their lipids, you know, and someone's saying, well, I take all my medicine, and then you start increasing. But you don't need to. They just need to increase their compliance.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So all of that's there. So that's where the goal of the whole IMME is to make everything very simple for the person that owns the clinic and the doctors that work in the clinic. And it just makes it, and then we'll get more and more buying power. And eventually what we're trying to do is we'll be making our own supplements.
Nice.
Because nothing against supplement companies, you know, I work with all you guys, but like it needs to go.
Yeah.
Because especially for this level of care. So when you're dealing with hundreds of compounds, what you end up having is you have more filler than you have active compound.
Yeah.
And you have too much mass in capsules, even if they're veggie capsule. So we can, if we did it ourselves, we could do it at a fraction of the cost. So, you know, I once was working for another clinic and I helped them design their own line of certain supplements. And when we did that and we worked with this guy called Pharmacognosist, a bottle that we were buying for $50, we made for $5.
Yeah.
And so if we can do that for the whole IMME and then not price gouge, but pass those savings on, what'll happen is that no one will be able to compete because of the quality that you're going to get and the price that you'll get and the data that we're going to get. So this is really what I think like A4M and IFM really wanted to be, but somehow they got off track, right? If they were in, you know, maybe they just want to do the education, but the big problem is like, say you go and you get functional medicine trained and you go to, and you get advanced functional medicine training and you go to tons of these workshops and you take all the tests and everything like that, you don't even know what to do.
Yeah.
Because it didn't give you algorithms to follow.
Yeah.
Right? But if you're working for NASA, there's a damn algorithm to follow for that maintenance engineering to the T.
No, yeah.
Right?
It's super complex and and then it's always hard to scale, right? Because like if you find the one provider that has it figured out, well, you can't like replicate that into another provider that, you know, it's just always different.
Right. And we're finding that with the stuff that we have works, but it can be so much better once we start getting all this data. Right. And once we really have people that are compliant and they have radical willingness and they're going to do this, I mean, this is just going to get better and better and better and better.
Yeah.
And it'll be a lot easier for these doctors to transition. Right? Because then they'll be like, okay, here's the business model. And we know exactly what it is. Right? These patients pay X amount of dollars per month. Right? And this is how much you're going to outlay. And then you won't, the other thing is you're not going to be tempted as a provider to upsell. We don't want to do that,
Makes sense.
right? We're trying to maintain the most complex, machine on the planet,
Yeah.
right? There's no need to upsell.
Yeah.
It's already upsold.
Yeah.
You're already at the highest, right? There's always going to be things you can add on for the people that have the extra money, for sure. But there's not going to be a need for it. There's going to be like, okay, in order for me to function, I'm going to have this many memberships. But by having the IME set up, people are already like, oh, I already vetted out the IME. I already saw all the protocols and stuff like that. And there's a location here.
Yeah. So is it actually going to be like physical locations, or is the software that you're developing and then implementing it into existing locations?
We want to just make it the software, and we want to make it the distribution.
Nice. Okay.
So that all the supplement packs can go out, all the testing can go out, all that. And then the locations will be up to the person, like, say you.
Yeah.
Right? You're like, okay, I want a location. What's it going to cost me? Right? It's to be like, okay, well, you're just going to have this many royalties that will go to IME to support the software and the research and that kind of stuff. All the rest is yours.
Yeah. But you would also just integrate into other clinics too, right? Yeah.
Any clinic that wanted to take it on, they could do it.
Yeah. Well, that's smart. I think definitely, standardization, because everyone's kind of just like we're figuring it out. We have an executive health program and you're just figuring it out, and, but that's hard to replicate. And so, yeah, I think that's going to be a really powerful solution.
Right. So. And it's like, do we want to do individualized medicine? For sure we do. Mm-hmm. Right. But, over the years of treating patients, I've noticed that it's not that great of a percentage.
Yeah.
And do I treat women different than men? Yeah. Do I treat people different by age? Do I treat people different by genetic markers? Yeah. But 90% of it's the same.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if it depends on how deep, you want to go in that individuality. But yeah, a lot of it is going to be, a lot of this stuff you could even assume, right? Let's just say, we can assume that most people have gut issues.
Yeah.
An imbalanced gut microbiome, right? So you could, assume that and then optimize it with.
Sure.
So how many times are people getting tests per year? They're doing the intake tests?
So some tests they're doing just once a year. Mm-hmm. Some tests they're doing every quarter.
Okay.
Some tests they're doing every 6 months. A lot of it right now has to do with cost, what people can afford.
Yeah.
With omic testing becoming cheaper and cheaper, we're going to be able to get it more and more often.
Yeah.
If your mitochondria are really bad, we're going to test them every 3 months.
Yeah, to see
If they're pretty good, every 6 months.
Yeah.
Right.
And describe to everybody listening what omic testing is.
So omics, there's lots of different omics. So there's genomics, there's epigenomics, there's metabolomics, there's proteomics, there's the omics from your bacteria and that live in your gut. So, and there's more. So what it can tell us is your overall health, right? So how are your genes being expressed? Mm-hmm. In a good way, not a good way, right? Epigenetics is basically how your genes, have been modified, all right, with, methylation or acetylation, different things like that, right?
Would that be like a true age test?
True age can do some of it,
okay,
right? Therium would have more. Mm-hmm. Some of the SASP testing can have some of that too, right? Looking at interleukins, looking at cytokines, those kind of things. You can pick up other things like that. There's new generation microbiome testing. Mm-hmm. Most of the microbiome testing that's on the market today is not accurate.
In what way?
It just doesn't pick it up accurately. So there's a bunch of, and this is where I get a little bit worked up about, functional medicine is there's a bunch of tests where I've sent in 3 tests, but it was just my test 3 times, and I got back 3 different results. Yeah. Right? So whenever I find a test isn't very reproducible, I'm like, well, use it with a grain of salt, right? Because I want a reproducible test.
Yeah. But my only question would be, let's just say a popular gut test.
Yeah.
So typically if you get the results and then, you treat them, then you'll see improvements. So, it has to, maybe it's either just the protocol is just good or that how does that work?
So let's just say you take any person and you give them glutamine and you give them butyrate.
Yeah.
They're going to get better.
Improvements, yeah.
Right? And then when you pull it, they might not be as good.
Yeah. Do you like colostrum for gut health?
I've played with it so many times, and I've used other stuff like IgG Protect and things like that. Mixed results. The number one thing I do for gut health, the people that have really bad guts, what I've noticed is, and this is a long time ago I started doing this, is I would send them to a specific pelvic floor therapist that measures anal tone and perineal tone.
Wow.
And I would get these crazy results back. Anal tone, 21 times normal. Anal tone, 17 times normal, right?
What does that mean exactly? 17 times normal?
So the tone of the anal sphincter was so tight that it's imagine instead of your anus just being shut, it's like you're squeezing your fist as hard as you can all the time. Okay. So this is that flight or fight response, right? The first thing you do when you see the tiger or whatever, right, is you either defecate, right, or you tighten your ass.
Yeah.
Right? And what that does is it sends you into fight or flight, but the other thing it does is it sends a signal from the bottom of the vagus nerve all the way up. And so it shuts down peristalsis, shuts down all the other organs, right? And just turns on heart, lungs, brain, lungs. Yes. Right? But a lot of people have that on all the time.
Yeah.
Right? And you'll see this a lot with IBS. Because then the IBS people, they're constipated and then they have diarrhea and then they're constipated and then they have diarrhea because the intuitive neurology of your gut is going to say, well, screw you, I'm going to move after you've paralyzed me for 12 hours or 24 hours or whatever it is, And, then there's this tug of war between the neurons in the gut want to do peristalsis. They want to move this food along. They want to digest it. But the fight or flight response is keeping it from going anywhere. And so then when the food doesn't go anywhere, well, then you're promoting anaerobic bacteria and, methane producing bacteria. And now you're screwing up the whole microbiome, right? And then everything moves really fast and now you've screwed up a different way. And so you could give rifaximin, and you could give oil of oregano, and you could give glutamine and, ion biome and all the other things, and you'll never fix it. It'll always go back because you didn't get to the root of the problem.
Yeah.
That person is not in coherence.
Yeah. But that's real quick before we talk about that, because it's a really great point. Okay, so then what is the gut testing that you guys are doing, for example?
So out of Hemmel's lab, there's a girl, Sierra, and she's doing a next level one, and it's all off of omics.
Is there a name? Can people get it?
It's not available yet, so it will be next quarter. Therium also is launching theirs next generation.
Okay, nice.
So both of those labs are going to have it.
Well, you'll have to ping me and tell me. Well, I know the Therium guys too, so I'll keep up to date on that.
So they're going to have it, and I would go off of that because, when you're trying to look at DNA of the stool, it's just not as accurate as you think you might be, right? And just because there's a certain species of bacteria there doesn't mean it's pissed off.
Yeah, that makes sense. But it is the best we have right now.
It's the best we have right now, right?
And it's better to get one and try to figure out what you say.
I think one of the tests that I really like getting over the microbiome testing is I like the KBMO lab.
KBMO lab, I don't know that one.
So KBMO, there's only 2 labs that I like for food sensitivities that tend to be accurate. Most of the other ones are just going off of IgG.
But real quick question. So don't you feel like, though, if the gut is leaky in general, you're going to have food sensitivities, right? If you heal that leaky gut, then you'll have less food sensitivities, right?
Yeah, you just got to figure out why is it leaky.
Yeah.
Right? So when you do a KBMO, you're going to get not only IgG, you'll get IgA, and you'll get complement. Because just because you have an immunoglobulin doesn't mean you really have a sensitivity. It's kind of like a barcode.
Yeah.
Right?
Tell people what IgA versus IgG is.
All right. So immunoglobulins are basically proteins with a sugar attached or a carbohydrate attached, right? So it's a modified. So these are glycans, right? Which is why we use the test glycanage, right? Glycanage is a fantastic test, like one of the most important age testing to get.
Oh, good. Yeah,
right?
I love that one.
By far. Right? It gives you, not on clock, but on data that you get from the glycans.
Okay.
All right. So these are glycans, and they're important glycans to measure. So IgA is the immunoglobulin that lives on the mucosal surfaces, so like the lining of your gut. And IgG is more like in your bloodstream.
Yeah.
All right. And then there's Ig, and there's other types of forms. So you can kind of isolate, well, where is this happening? Right? If it's only IgA, like it hasn't really made it through, and it's more isolated in the gut. If it's IgA and IgG, well, then you know it's probably some leaky gut going on there because now this antigen is going across into the blood. All right? And then if there's complement associated with the IgA, now you know you're having an inflammatory reaction to whatever it is that IgA is binding to. And like what an antigen is basically like, say, the broccoli, would be an antigen. And this IgA doesn't like broccoli or something in one of the molecules in broccoli. All right. And so it's attaching to that. And then it releases complement. And so now you have inflammation. And then you'll have other testing that it shows you, which is zonulins and occludins. And zonulins and occludins tell you whether or not the barrier between your gut and your bloodstream are open or closed.
Yeah.
Because the lining of your gut is really only one cell thin. And they have these things called gap junctions that hold the cells really tight together. And when you have a bunch of inflammation, the cells kind of swell, and then you get spaces, and then things that should stay in the gut don't stay in the gut. And now you have reaction.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why I like KBMO is like you can see like which foods are bothering you, causing this inflammatory reaction, whether or not you have occludins or zonulin, products, and so that you can fix that leaky gut. And, you remove the foods, you give the things that help your gut out, the glutamine, the butyrate, probiotics, aloe, you can go down the rabbit hole. There's so many things you can give, right? And you get it to go. And I really love Ion Biome from Dr. Zach Bush.
Yeah.
That stuff works.
Great guy.
Fantastic. I mean, like, I do a teaspoon in the morning and do a teaspoon at night. I think it's one of the best things to protect you from things like, glyphosate.
Yeah, which is almost impossible.
Which is ubiquitous in our environment.
It is. I love Zach Bush. I just saw him at Eudaimonia.
Nice.
Yeah.
How was that? Did you like it?
It was great. It was a really great event. Yeah, I spoke there and amazing speakers. I saw
Awesome.
It was so fun because it's like it felt like I don't know, a class reunion. It's just so many people in like one spot.
It's a small world.
It is a really small world. Yeah. It's like, oh, I saw you like last week or last month at this other event,
Yeah. I've mostly been in Europe lately. They're way ahead of us. They're working with small interfering RNA, microRNA.
Yeah.
They're printing cells at like an incredible way. Their genetics are ahead of us.
Yeah.
So
I was at the Longevity Investors Conference too in Ishtad.
Yeah.
That was, amazing things coming down the pipeline. Everybody always asks me, so, we put this figure, I said 150, that's how long I want me and my husband to live.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, well, how are you going to get there? And it's like, well, I'm really fortunate because I'm starting this really early, right?
Yeah.
And I need to just get to I think Aubrey calls it the longevity escape velocity, right? Like when we can actually rejuvenate. So, and I believe that that's coming. Like, I think that'll be in our lifetime too.
It'll definitely be there. And like getting back to like what you would get at the clinic, with all these things. It's so, if you talk to Aubrey, he wants to just reverse age.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's two things, right? Like we want to slow aging down, but there's only so much you can do that for, right?
Yeah.
And so Aubrey's right. You can only slow down aging so much, right? But reversing age is pretty much unlimited, depending on the technology. But we live today, all right? And so we know that calorie restriction works in every single living creature that we know of.
Yeah.
Right? So calorie restriction mimetics, which are rapalogs, right, work really well. And so if you look at Aubrey's new work, he's doing like 4 things at once.
Yeah.
Right? And it's really funny because I was talking to him at a Healthy Masters conference a few years ago, and I was showing him like all the different things I was doing at once. And we were just saying, I'm like, why are you only doing one?
Yeah.
Why do you guys keep doing one thing?
Yeah.
Right? And it just was cost, really.
Yeah.
Right? But now they're able to do multiple things because I'm like, I do like everything. I'm just kind of shotgun approach as long as they know that it's healthy and it's not causing problems and we're testing, you know? And so what I like to do is let's slow aging down as much as we can, right? You'll hear people that promote protein, and it drives me crazy in the longevity space. It really does.
Yeah, a lot of people do. Right. I mean, I like protein too, so I'm excited to hear what you said.
They just love firing protein at people, and I'm just like, okay, you're going against all of the calorie restriction data that we have. So here's how it goes. Leucine and arginine turn over cells rapidly to make you grow.
Yeah, it's
all right.
Boosting up mTOR.
And boost mTOR. We want to reduce mTOR. All right. So like if you're an athlete or like, you know, you want to make your deadlift go from 300 to 500 in a short period of time, sure, you know, jack up your protein. But it's like what Aubrey is saying, like you're a metabolic machine and it's the metabolism by itself that's making you age.
Yeah.
And so what we want to do as much as we can is we want to slow down metabolism as much as we can without causing problem.
But this is where I always, because I go over this idea in my head, right? So just a conversation here. Where is the line from, well, I have 2 questions actually. One, let's say, so, you know, for a woman, caloric restriction, I used to be very calorically restricted.
Yeah.
I mean, I still have a very low body fat percentage in general. I don't overeat by any means. But, you know, I watched as my thyroid started to tick down. You know, I watched as my hormones became less balanced.
Yeah.
So it's like, so that's like from a female side. Then from like a general side, let's say you're a 55-year-old male, have very little muscle mass, and, you know, you're doing caloric restriction, your T goes through the floor. Like, where is that balance? How do we identify where we land at?
Yeah, I mean, that's where measuring comes in, right? So I'm down to 1 gram per kilogram of protein per day.
How much is that? Sorry, I'm not an expert on kilograms.
So you just take your pounds and you divide by 2.2.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, so that's,
So like, you know, I'm about 190 pounds, you know, so, you know, I forget what it is. Where am I at? Like 70 or 80 some grams of protein, something like that. I think I'm about 80 grams. So any athlete would be like, that's atrocious. So you're never going to be able to like live your life.
Yeah.
I'm not really in a growth phase. So my kind of barometer is my DEXA scan to see like, is my muscle mass dwindling?
Yeah.
Right? And my lifts. And, you know, they're arbitrary, but like when I can't deadlift twice my weight, then I know my strength's going down.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't really think anybody really needs a deadlift twice their weight, but like it's a nice thing to have.
Yeah.
Right? You know, genetically, you could probably deadlift 3.5 times your weight or something, right? I don't think it's necessary, right? I just want to make sure that my mitochondria are working and I have enough muscle mass, you know, to the frame of my body.
Yeah.
And by keeping my protein down, and especially it's what amino acids. So it's the methionine, the arginine, and the leucine that I really like to limit. And that's why I really choose a plant-based diet, because, you know, animal protein is really high in those amino acids. It's also really high in the sulfur amino acids like methionine. And what sulfur amino acids do is they get converted into sulfuric acid, right? And so then it changes the pH of your body quite a bit, and you have to regulate your pH more. And, you know, more acidic environment causes a bunch of things, right? You get more dystrophic calcification, you know, it's a little bit harder on your kidneys, things like that. So that's where I like to keep protein down. Now, say I have somebody that comes in and they're sarcopenic from the beginning, right? Or they're a woman that has been on a really low calorie diet, because they're just trying to stay thin and they're like that skinny fat, right? Low bone density, high body fat, super low muscle. They can't start out with 1 gram per kilogram.
Yeah.
Right? We have to do a build phase. Mm-hmm. Right? That person might go up to 1.8 grams per kilogram. Right? And we get them on a really good diet and we strengthen their strength up, we get their muscle mass up. And then after they're strong enough, then we start to taper them back down to a maintenance dose. But, the one thing that we learn from bodybuilders is like when you want to build, you have to gain fat and muscle at the same time. Right? You can't just keep building a little bit of muscle without gaining fat. It's just really, really difficult.
Yeah.
Right? I don't like a lot of things bodybuilders do, right? But like there's certain things that they do really well. And, and the other thing is that they weigh everything, right? They know exactly what they're putting in their body. I don't like what they put in their body, but they know exactly what they are, right? So we could learn a lot from what they do about how they feed. Mm-hmm. But that's kind of the thing is, so because then why take a rapamycin or something that's going to lower mTOR if you're just going to be feeding all of this protein?
Yeah.
Right? Because you're going to overcome a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
So we want things to work synergistically together, but we also don't want to create disease. Mm-hmm. And that's why we have to have engineering.
Yeah. Agreed. And it's like on a kind of case-by-case basis, if like you're super low muscle, then that makes
sure.
That makes a lot
and
of
it's like the discovery process. Like, there's an airplane that just came off the line and you don't have to do much for it. You run through a bunch of tests and it's fine. Then you have this 30-year-old airplane and you do the discovery process and you're like, oh shit, we got to replace this. We got to replace that. You got to work on this. You got to work on that, but they're both the same algorithm, right? It's just one of them's a lot easier to do because you don't have much to do.
Yeah.
It's just check, 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 check. And the other one's like, oh, no, got to work on this. Oh, got to work on that.
Yeah.
And so, but it's the same algorithm.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So where do you think, what's the future of AI and longevity? Because like ideally, we all have our own bot that like helps us be on track. We upload our data.
So the whole idea is that there's a central AI that's built into IMME. And that AI is speaking directly to the individual, the member, through their app. Right? It's also working on the algorithm because even with the amount of data that I'm dealing with, there's no way I can possibly process all of this as a human.
Yeah.
It's impossible. Like you might think you can, but there's no way. Right? It's just too much.
Yeah.
Right? There's just way too much data. Just look at, say like something as simple as like your epigenetic test, right? Like if you ever look at the raw data of that, it's insane.
Yeah, totally.
Right? No human can look at that.
Yeah.
Right? You're looking at the score, like, oh, here's my Dundon pace or whatever, right? But like, look what's behind that.
Totally.
Right? There's just so much data. And so we need this AI to look at it to keep us in check and to help us like increase the quality of these algorithms.
And within that, you think like predictive models of like, are there any predictive models now? Like you upload your data, I'm assuming there are, right? And then it tells you like what you're.
Yeah. Therium has one.
Okay.
And so does Hemal Patel with MeScreen. So we're leveraging their platforms for the IMME in the future.
Nice.
One of the cool things that they have, and they both have it, and it's just different wording, is Therium talks about digital twinning. Hemal talks about like more like digital cloning. Right? And so, and this is going to be, it's already here, but it's going to get light years better. And so what it is we take your whole parameters. All right, we take your Dante genomics, right, which is your entire genome. We feed that into that, right? We take all of the tests that we did, for your discovery process, and we feed that into that. We take on all your physical parameters, right? Your blood pressure, all your other things, your DEXA scan, your MRI. We feed all that into it, And then what it does is it says, okay, we're going to give you this much rapamycin, or we're going to give you this much dasatinib, and we're going to give you this much resveratrol and this much NAD, and then run it out 50 years. What happens? Okay, make a different protocol and run that out. And the AI could do like millions of renditions of that and see like which protocol for your physiology is really going to be best. And then as it gets to learn you over time, its predictions get more and more accurate.
Yeah.
There's no human that could possibly do that.
Yeah, no, I'm so excited.
Right. And that's the whole future of how we're going to use AI and how this entire field is impossible without it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, absolutely. I agree. Is there anything else you want to say about age AI and longevity?
Use the AI that's already here.
Which one should we use, though?
So, like, it's already built into all these scans. Like, the two most important ones for everyone to get are, make sure you get a good full body MRI where an AI is reading it.
Yeah.
Right? And make sure you get a clearly exam.
How do people request, though, that an AI reads it? How are they... Is there any like company that you can...
Yeah, so there's the company out of Europe, out of England. What is wrong with me? I'm going to give you the information. You can put it on there.
I'll put it on the show notes.
You can just dub it in or something.
You can link it in the show notes.
All right, just link it in the show notes. But they're doing not only the liver scan, but they're doing all the organ scans.
Okay.
Right.
Nice.
The other AI is from it's called the NeuroQuant.
Okay, yeah, I've heard of that.
And that's from Cortex Labs. And so, the one company is doing the organs, and then NeuroQuant from Cortex Labs is doing your brain.
Yeah.
And that's a volumetric assessment of your brain.
Nice.
So all the different components of the brain, it's looking and see what sizes they are, and it's comparing the hemispheres.
Oh, great.
So what's the hippocampus on the left versus the hippocampus on the right?
Yeah.
And if there's a difference, what's really interesting is like people that have been exposed to mold, or people with chronic inflammatory response syndrome, or somebody that had some kind of an infarct or something. You're going to see a difference from one side of the brain to the other in the size of those components, right? And then you can track that over time, and you can figure out, well, all right, there's a difference here, so let me go down the rabbit hole and order some tests that maybe I didn't test.
Yeah.
And see what else is going on here.
Yeah.
Right? And so it gives you a little more insight of what to do, and then you track that over time. Mm-hmm. So, we have data on different parts that we would have never had, because what radiologist is going to have the time to sit there and measure all these parts of your brain, and how accurate is that going to be?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
It's just not going to, right? And so you get all these great measurements that are impossible by hand.
Yeah.
And so, right now you have the NeuroQuant, you have the organ scan, and then with the Clearly, you can see unstable plaques that are not visible by the human eye.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and if you do that, you're pretty much eliminating most of those single points of failure at the top end.
Yeah, I
right?
agree.
Because those top end ones are MI, stroke,
Yeah.
cancer.
Yeah.
Right? Not that you're eliminating, but you're decreasing the chance that they're going to take you out.
Yeah. Do you do liquid biopsies?
Yeah, I like the Grail test.
Yeah.
It does have its limitations, for sure. But it's one of the best of its kind.
Yeah.
Right? And it's just as far as the whole cancer community goes, the amount of really cool tools has never been better.
Yeah.
Right? There's a company called Immunosine, and they're making basically a vaccine for your cancer.
Interesting.
So it's really expensive. It's like $100,000, but like they can take a sample of your tumor, and then they create a vaccine to it, and they inject it, and it goes and kills your cancer without killing your normal cells.
That's great.
Right?
I love that.
The CAR T cells are amazing too. Right? Those are awesome. There's a company out of Greece that's looking at circulating tumor cells. They've been around for a while.
Yeah. Is it like RCGG?
Yes, yeah. So they've been there for a while. So they're doing that. there's so many cool tools for cancer, right? So, and if you find
this, because cancer is just skyrocketing. So,
and the whole thing is like, most cancers, if you find them stage 1, stage 2, they're curable, like 85%. With normal chemotherapy at the regular hospital, right? And stage 3, stage 4, not so much.
Yeah. I mean, I know I do every year, I do a liquid biopsy.
Yeah.
And all the things.
Right. And women at least get mammograms, but they don't do anything for men's prostates. They just, get a PSA, which is like a garbage test.
Yeah.
Right. But if you do a full body MRI with a dedicated prostate scan, now you've got something that's useful.
Yeah. I actually like more than mammograms now. There's something called QT imaging.
Yeah.
Way less invasive.
Yeah.
And you're not using any radiation. So,
yeah.
And the imaging is, I just had one of those done.
Yeah. I'm trying to find companies that will do the breast with the MRI. Mm-hmm. The only trouble with that is you have to be laying prone.
Yeah.
And they usually have to do an extra scan.
Yeah.
Right. But they'll do it.
Yeah. I mean, mammogram, I've interviewed a lot of breast cancer surgeons, breast cancer researchers, and it's just, we have to have something better.
Oh, yeah. It's like what hold is. It's an X-ray looking at soft tissue.
Yeah. And the people with, dense breast tissue, it just, so.
It's only going to pick up certain types of cancer.
Yeah.
Right. And if it's not well calcified, it's not going to pick it up.
Yeah. So, well, this has been great.
Awesome.
This has been a good conversation. Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
This podcast is for informational purposes only, and views expressed on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Kayla Barnes, does not accept responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of the information contained herein. Opinions of their guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical issue, consult a licensed physician.